What's good, y'all? Welcome to Conversation Piece, the podcast about the missing pieces of the conversations we are already having. I'm your host, Patrick Armstrong, and I appreciate y'all being here, whether you are new or returning in 2024, the year of the nap. Part 2. We are in the back half of 2024 right now. It is July, and it is very, very not as hot as it was in June. And I'm feeling very good about that. But anyways, what I'm also feeling very good about is my guest today. My guest today is a speaker, storyteller, coach, as well as the founder of Elevation is a Must, a personal development and media platform empowering young professionals. He's also the creator of The Quest, a video series sharing the success stories of small business owners around the city of Indianapolis. It is my honor and privilege to welcome David Gibson to the show. David, thank you for sitting down with me.
Patrick, man, it's an honor, first and foremost. What a heck of an introduction, brother.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Is he talking about me?
That is you.
For sure,
There's so much that you do that I think there is to talk about, and I hope we can dive into it today. But It is an honor for me to sit across from you, somebody who I've been following for a little bit now and who has impacted me with the work and the words that you share in a way that doesn't always show up visibly for other people. So I just want to say thank you for doing what you do, because it's impacting me. If it's impacting anyone at a level, it's impacting me individually. So thank you.
Man, that's humbling to hear. I'm grateful that my work inspires and resonates with you.
Absolutely. So I gave you a little bit of an introduction, but for people watching, people listening who don't know who you are, do you mind sharing just a little bit more about yourself?
It's an interesting question. Who are you? A little bit about yourself. So, quick story. Back in 2013, in fact, the exact date was October 3rd of 2013, I got called into the office of this corporate space that I was working in. And after about 7.5 years, they told me they no longer needed me. Now, I was in a space where I was still discovering myself. I had been given a vision to impact others through my words, through storytelling, through inspiration. But at the time, I didn't necessarily have the confidence nor the courage to step out and do this in the way that I envisioned it. But I was laid off. And I made the conscious decision, Patrick, in that moment that I was no longer going to do things that didn't express my heart. So even though I didn't have it figured out, I took a step. And every day after that, I took another step. So when you ask, who am I? That summarizes ultimately my mindset. When I have a vision that I'm passionate about, I may not have it all figured out, but ultimately, I'm going to develop the courage to take steps in that direction and see what it's going to become.
I love that. So I appreciate you sharing that part of your experience, because that was something I wanted to ask you about. You talk about on your website, that being kind of the foundational or bedrock moment that sends you into entrepreneurship. Then you have some other stuff that happens that leads you down this path of being able to do what you're doing now. And you talk about when you got brought into the office, 10/3/2013, and they tell you, David, we don't need you anymore. You didn't at that time have the courage to express yourself in the way that you wanted to. What helped you start developing that post that moment?
Well, leading up into that moment, while I was working in that space, I had been given the vision. And to really give you more context, I was in a mental space, Patrick, where it was almost as if God himself had given me the vision. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was like I heard the voice of God saying, I want you to travel and encourage individuals to live out their dreams, to become the best version of themselves. And in that moment, I literally laughed out loud because I found it difficult for me to even encourage myself.
Sure.
Right? I'm dealing with some mental struggles and some internal conflicts. So I'm navigating these mental health challenges.
Right.
And over an extended period of time, as I became more of who I truly am, and I began to rise above those internal struggles, I would just share my experiences with others, right? I would share the insights that I was gaining from those experiences, and I found out that people were listening, right? Because my internal struggle, in many cases, I felt insecure, I felt inferior, I felt as if my life lacked purpose. I felt as if I wasn't enough, right? All of these things I'm internalizing and I'm processing and I'm struggling with. So as I began to share insights online particularly, and at the time it was really just Facebook back in like 2011, 2012, so to speak.
Early adopter of the
Yeah,
Facebook.
so
Yeah.
at that time, people would just reach out and they would say, hey, David, man, these words are really inspiring me. These words are really encouraging me. And I also went to speak at one of my uncle's funerals. And like that was the first time I really stepped on a platform and spoke in a public setting. And it really violates, so to speak, well, violates not a great word. It challenges and contradicts my personality. Growing up, I was very quiet and reserved. And as I stepped out and spoke from the heart, I didn't think anything of it. But people came up to me afterwards and were like, yo, your words really connected with me. Your words really encouraged me. And after that funeral, I got invited to speak at another event, right? So I'm like, here it is. I'm being placed in these positions where I'm confronting my fears, right? I have to go face to face with these insecurities in order for me to perform, so to speak, on stage and deliver a message. And, if we have time, we can dive into the first really like keynote speech that I had and the struggle that I was battling with fear. But to kind of quickly summarize it, as I overcame that, that's when the realization was born that, hey, possibly something can come from this. Sure. And I'm a man of faith, right? And I began to understand as I was navigating these fears and these negative thoughts that were aiming to manipulate my mindset, that what the enemy sends after you is an indication of what's at work within you, right? Like the struggles that we have, the challenges that we face are often an indication of what makes you great. So you can't run away from the things that make you uncomfortable.
Sure.
You have to learn to confront them head on, and that's when you can tap into your personal power. So when I got laid off, this is the mental state that I was in. Granted, I didn't know what tomorrow was going to look like.
Right.
I didn't know what steps I was going to take. I didn't have any connections, right? Any experience, no mentors in that particular space. But what I did have was a vision, and I started to develop faith and belief in myself.
Yeah.
And when I believe in myself, when anybody believes in themselves, they can believe in possibility. And if your mind can see the possibility, your eyes will start seeing the opportunities.
That's so interesting. I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's so interesting to think about the vision coming first
Yeah.
and being so clear that it made you laugh. Because at the time, it's like, that's not me.
Yeah.
Or I don't see that for myself in this present moment. And yet, for whatever reason, post layoff, you were tapping into the vision.
Yeah.
Does that was it always clear to you what that looked like? Or do you gain clarity, do you gain clarity as you find yourself in these positions, speaking, sharing online, at the funeral, which I think is also another interesting thing. When you think about funerals are very intimate, personal moments. Right. Obviously, you're sharing some personal, speaking from the heart.
Right.
But that something the more we think about finality and end point, a funeral, a lot of times can be associated for you as almost like a launch pad to then that big first keynote.
Yeah.
And so I feel like all of this is going back to tapping into the vision. So I guess I'm just interested in knowing, was it always clear to you what was shown to you at that point, and then you just worked to realize the vision? Or does it become clear and change or evolve as you are finding yourself then in these positions and discovering more about yourself?
For each person, I believe is different. The leaders that I've worked with, and for me personally, it wasn't clear.
Sure.
It was like, here's something that's a possibility. Here's a snippet of what can be. And that's what makes it challenging, right? Because you don't have that clarity surrounding this idea or this particular concept. And what often happens is we can often dream so big that it becomes more intimidating than it is inspirational.
Right.
So what I've learned to do, like particularly in those moments, I was dreaming big, but I said, let me start small. What's one thing that I can do now?
Sure.
And as I began to take continuous and active steps towards what I was, feeling and what made me come alive, the clarity started to develop, right? Because granted, like 11 years ago, when I initially got the vision and got into this position that I'm doing now, full-time entrepreneurship, I I couldn't imagine me doing the work that I'm doing now, right?
Yeah.
Initially, it was just speaking, then that evolved into speaking and coaching and group coaching and, me partnering with brands and creating content and things of that nature. But out the gate, that wasn't what I saw.
Right.
But what I did was there was a vision, there was this idea, there was this desire to impact others. I started moving in that direction, then things started branching out.
It makes me think about, in pop culture right now, the idea of multiverse, multiple realities is very prevalent. And I think in some movies, they talk about when you dream, you're seeing into other lives, and you have this vision, which it seems like could be a completely other life for yourself. Yeah. And yet you've made the vision a reality in this specific universe that you occupy, in the reality of your current life, which I think is really interesting because, like you said, we dream big, we take big swings, and it becomes more intimidating to take the small steps to move forward. Because when we do dream big, which is not necessarily a bad thing,
right,
we can fall into an expectation of deliverance, of achieving, of success for that big dream. And we don't necessarily put the time in to take those small steps, those one-by-one steps to make it there. I say all this speaking from experience, having dreamt big, having swung big and failed multiple times, because I didn't lay the groundwork to make sure that I was taking the small steps to build a solid foundation, to then grow and grow and grow. And you, luckily, did the opposite of me, and you were taking those steps. So what was it like going from, okay, we want you, you spoke so well at the funeral, we want to tap you for another thing, we want to invite you to speak at another event, and then that's now the process for you getting to your first big keynote, still getting over the fears and maybe some of the self-doubts and self-worth ideas and things that you were struggling with. Can you walk us through that process, getting to that first point, and then what that was like to be able to approach that first big keynote?
Man, it was nerve-wracking. Because like I mentioned earlier, growing up, I was very quiet and reserved, and I'm naturally introverted. So I'm stepping into a space where you're the center of attention. Yeah. And, naturally my personality wants to reject that. Yeah. And what I've learned to do to overcome, that nervousness and that anxiety surrounding being in front of people is understanding that it's not about me, right? And this took some time. So as I'm developing this mindset of empowering others, man, the passion really started boiling on the inside of me when I understood that the experiences that I've had, the struggles that I've faced, I'm not alone on this journey. Somebody else is in that position. They're going into that position. They're struggling with particular challenges that I can relate to. And me entering into these spaces, given the platform and the opportunity to be able to share insights and ideas, I'm in a position of service now, right? So that's how I began to overcome that. And granted, it's not easy, right? It's simple, but it's not easy. Right. Right? It's you understanding that you have value. It's you connecting with your true worth. It's you continuously improving yourself. And most importantly, you shutting down that negative voice in your mind that tells you that you can't do it. Because granted, no matter who you are, what you're doing, and at what level you're working and operating at, you still hear that voice. Sure. So you have to actively shut that voice down. And the best way to overcome self-doubt, Patrick, what I've learned from personal experience is not simply just to aim to think different, right? It's more about you acting in a way that changes the way that you think. Right. Meaning you confront that doubt and you continue to take steps every single day. And what begins to happen is it's like going to the gym. As you lift weights, you're building muscle. And as you take steps towards your vision and stepping outside of your comfort zone, you're exercising your confidence muscles. Exactly. You're exercising your courageous muscles, and that becomes stronger. And therefore, that negativity doesn't have the same influence over you.
Exactly. To change a mindset, you have to take the actions to change it. Yeah. It's not, you can't just think differently. It's easy for me to say, oh, well, I think different now. But if we could read minds, you would probably see that I'm still thinking the same because I haven't done the work, again, taken the steps to get to the point of actual change. Yeah. And I think when we talk about systemic change, I think a lot of people misunderstand that we have to take the small steps to reach a point of being able to change the system.
Yeah.
This is really reminding me of our conversation with Murdoch, so I appreciate that.
Murdoch's my guy.
Murdoch is dope, and we need. Okay, never mind. I got some things in my head right now. I appreciate you sharing all of that, especially the overcoming and talking about, okay, you get on a big stage and you're naturally an introvert. I feel like I'm similar. I resonate with that.
Yeah.
Tracy Ellis Ross once shared that she's an introvert playing an extrovert. And I always resonated with that.
I can relate to that.
That is me. I learned how to put the mask on of extroversion a long time ago, and I keep doing it. But it's really, it's an uncomfortable space for me sometimes. Is that discovering kind of the stepping out of introversion into extroversion, is that a hidden characteristic or quality that you discovered during this time of discovery, I guess? And if not, what were some of those hidden qualities or traits that you found in yourself that you now call upon in this work?
Oh, man. We'd be here all day, because it's like, I tell many leaders, Patrick, the best personal growth course you can ever take is to start a business. Because it forces you to confront yourself, every aspect of who you are, your mindset, your beliefs, the story that you're telling yourself, the trauma that's often operating in your mind, right? From your past, your insecurities, your tendencies, your habits, your environment. It forces you to really confront everything about you, right? So the qualities that I've learned to adopt over the years and from experiences, the list can go on, but as I'm thinking right now, really faith.
Okay.
Having faith is one, which is critical to be able to connect with something that doesn't physically exist. You know what I mean? When you have faith, it's ultimately you believing in something that contradicts logic or reasoning, or in some cases, your senses, meaning I can't see it, touch it, taste it, feel it, so to speak, right? And faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things that is not seen. So you being able to continue to remind yourself of what's possible when it contradicts or your environment or your certain current circumstance contradicts that's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a challenge, right? But ultimately, I tell many leaders, never downgrade your dreams and your vision to fit and match your reality. You should always upgrade your mindset to match your destiny, right? And what I mean by that is you have to actively work to be intellectually involved with your vision and emotionally invested, right? What I mean by those things, right? I don't mean to turn this into
extrapolate.
You know what I mean?
Love it.
But to be intellectually involved, I know exactly what it is that I want, right? I've developed some level of clarity. I may not have it down to a T, but this is the direction. This is my intention.
Yeah.
This is where I'm going. And to be emotionally invested, we have to understand in life, we don't get what it is that we want. We attract the things that we are, right? So if it's something that we want, we have to actively learn to reflect it. And you can reflect things when you start connecting with it emotionally. I cannot start attracting success if I'm operating in a fearful mindset, if I'm angry, if I'm upset, if I'm constantly disappointed and discouraged. That's not operating on the same frequency as my goals and my dreams. I have to be emotionally invested, meaning I have to start becoming the type of energy that I'm aiming to attract. I've got to operate with a successful mindset. I have to maintain a positive attitude. I have to be a forward thinker, right? I have to look beyond what is so I can connect with what can be, right? In the book of life, Paul talks about, I'm going to call forth things that are not as though they were. So when I say emotionally invested, actively working to prime yourself for success every single day. That's faith. Faith at its finest. That's one thing. We can go down that avenue. But also time management, man.
Yeah.
Partnering and creating strategic alliances and collaborations, right? And connecting with people. Because in business, people do business with those that they know, like, and trust.
Sure.
Right? It's not even about being the best in many cases. It's about making those right connections and providing, a space to give value, right?
And build a relationship.
Building relationships, right? So these are things that I've learned over the years, and experiences have taught me this.
100%. I appreciate you sharing that. Again, making me think a lot of my conversation with Murdoch, but you talk about networking, strategic thinking, all of these things that can be like skills you develop. Faith is kind of like that bedrock thing. Yeah. And that skill, that hidden quality or trait that can drive everything else. And it makes me think of something Murdoch said. It's like, if you can answer these 3 questions, who are you, what are you doing, where are you going? Yeah. Those 3 questions lead to 30 seconds more of conversation, which leads to 30 more minutes of conversation, which then leads to 30 more days of relationship building, which can lead to a genuine relationship with your purpose in life. When you start to have that conversation, when you start to answer those questions. And I love this concept that you talked about for faith of being seeing what's ahead so you can focus every day on reaching towards what's ahead. Yeah. And then also understanding that there's stuff behind you, the stuff in your past, the traumas or whatever it might be, that is informing your current present. That makes what steps you take to get to the future all the more important because you're informed by your history, right. Whether it's your own personal history or the history and lineage of the community that you come from. There's things in your past that inform what you do in the present to get to the future. I think we can get caught up, and again, speaking from experience of being in the past, thinking too far ahead, not being present in those moments. And so I really appreciate you sharing that because I think having it kind of broken down in almost a scientific way of like, this is how this can work for you if you want to overcome these things, I think is so important for people to hear. And so I appreciate you sharing that. And
can I add to that?
Absolutely.
Because you bring up a very valuable point.
Yeah.
Because I think this is a pain point that many leaders often face when it comes to them aiming to level up their life or in some cases completely reinvent themselves. And to kind of paraphrase it, I'll say it this way. Most people base their level of ambition on 3 things. Number 1, their current capabilities. Number 2, their current competencies. And then number 3, their past. But catch this, Patrick. They fail to recognize that all 3 of those categories can be changed and improved. Now, hear me clearly on this, okay?
All right.
You may say, well, okay, D1, yeah, I can improve my current capabilities, right? I can learn new skills. I can acquire knowledge. I can improve my current competencies. But how can I improve my past? How you can improve your past is by you changing the meaning and the interpretation that you attach to your experiences. Because for so many of us, we've made mistakes, we've been rejected, we've had setbacks, we've experienced trauma, and we've created mental blockages, right? Mental limitations within our mind that tells us what we're capable of accomplishing, who we are, where we can go, how much money we can earn, who we can be around, right? The things that we can achieve. Failing to recognize, catch this, brother, like the opportunities are out there. For those tapped in right now, like there's something that you want, there's something that you desire, I can almost guarantee you it's within your grasp, but you're missing it because of the story that you're telling yourself based upon your past experiences. And we have to understand the story that you tell yourself about yourself carries the greatest influence over your life. So you may be skilled, you may be gifted, you may be talented, you may have great capabilities, you've got unique qualities that provide value to others, but you're missing opportunities because you don't see it in yourself.
Yep.
So what we have to learn to do is change the narrative in our mind. And start connecting with the essence of who we truly are. That's when doors begin to open up.
I love that. So we just talked about relationships with other people that you build. And this is the relationship with yourself. And so like if you can, like you can, like you said, you can do those 2 pillars, capabilities and competencies. Yeah. The past is, again, intangible. And this is something I talk about a lot in like the adoptee community is like mindset and narrative shift is intangible. So it's hard to see and it's hard to change because you can't quantify it. And so people are like, we're just going to move past this because I don't get that. But you can, and I've learned this through therapy, like doing the work to address that and change the relationship that you have with not just your past, but yourself is so important because, again, like you just said, it allows you to tap into your full humanity. I'm operating in a place where I'm the most whole version of myself that I've ever been. That doesn't mean that I'm not moving towards an even more whole version of myself.
Yeah.
But I've only been able to reach that because competencies and capabilities, I got those on lock, but the relationship I have with myself and the past version of myself only truly changed, not when I started to accept that person, but when I found love for that person. And that took a lot of work because there were a lot of times where I felt like I'd reached the mountaintop. And you think about a success, we talk about big dreams and big swings, and then you start to fall into complacency, not take the steps every day to continue working. When I got back in, when forced into the position of taking those steps, coming to the realization that, oh, I thought acceptance and love were the same thing, but that's not the case. It's like I have further to go. And so I really love that you said that because, again, it takes me to my next question, which is this whole version of yourself. In one of your books, you describe it as you describe the world as needing more people who have come alive. And so when I think about this conversation that we're having right now and how you tap into your full self, I think about that phrase. And so I think we've defined it a little bit, but can you define how someone comes alive in that way and how you have found yourself fully alive or coming alive every day in this work that you do, which will then take us to the next thing that I want to talk about?
That's a packed question.
It is a little bit. It's loaded.
So let me begin the answer by saying that quote that you just mentioned came from Howard Thurman. Now, Howard Thurman, in many ways, was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s mentor. And I was tuning into one of his lectures. He's a great, phenomenal philosopher, a theologian, brilliant man. Really provokes thought when you listen to his lectures. But as I was tapping into one of his recordings, he said, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive. Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive. Now, to answer the question that you're asking, envision, just picture for a moment with me, a world where everybody is operating in their gifts and pursuing their passions, living their dreams, right? Doing the things that make them come alive. Like, imagine the type of world that we would be living in. Imagine the problems that we can solve, right? Imagine how people's health would be radically improved, right? Studies have proven that many heart attacks happen on Monday morning, 9 a.m. That's where most people are going into jobs that they hate, doing things that they deeply do not enjoy, right? Imagine how we can solve issues in the world in which we're living, right? Imagine how families can be enhanced because mom is doing something that she loves and dad is pursuing something that he's passionate about. That's the world that I envision, right? That's the world that I believe we can become. And that's why I do the work that I do, because I'm a firm believer that all of us, we have a purpose. Of course, we have passions, but I believe those passions have a purpose that's attached to them, meaning we can take the things that we love and enjoy and make them impactful to others. Does that make sense?
100%. It absolutely makes sense. I do. And so I do want to ask one question because I think it's important to address, in that there are, I absolutely agree that if we could, I can envision that world too. I think I can see the outlines of it, at least, where we're all operating in that space, and it's wonderful. There is a lot of self-doubt in all of us that can keep us from that. There are also systemic barriers that are not of our own creation that can keep us from going in that direction. I think something I really love about your work, particularly the Quest series, is that I think you're highlighting a small business challenges some of the systemic barrier, but it can't remove that barrier per se because it's like ingrained in the society that we operate in. Can you speak to that a little bit, just in how changing our own personal mindsets can help us combat this type of systemic pressure and suppression that we face?
Yeah. So I'll answer it first and foremost by saying this. When we think about the challenges, what the average person wants to do is run away from them.
I agree.
Right? Shout out to We Don't Run From Adversity. Right?
Shout them out. You know I got them on somewhere.
I love that slogan and that saying because it's our challenges that make us better, that help us evolve.
Mm.
Think about, man, like if you had everything that you wanted instantly, automatically, like everything that you prayed for, everything that you desired, every goal that you wanted to achieve, you accomplished it immediately. What else would there be to live for? You know what I mean? Like our challenges, our struggles, they help us evolve. They help us grow. And in many cases, they bring us fulfillment, especially when you rise above them. And they bring us fulfillment because it's not about what we do, but it's more about who we become. And it's our struggles and our challenges that help us become who we were destined to be. So when we talk about the systemic challenges, I believe as leaders, we should face them head on. Of course, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be difficult, but just because it's difficult doesn't mean it's impossible.
Right.
We have to have the courage to step into what makes us uncomfortable. Don't be afraid of the things that make you uncomfortable. Accept the challenge to expand your capabilities. And I believe this is what makes the journey and the quest, so to speak, well worth it.
Yeah.
When you look at what you've overcome and how you've grown and how you've evolved and what you navigated through, what you got knocked down by but bounced forward and figured out how to rise above, that's what helps us bring that fulfillment that we deeply desire. And we hold that in our hearts. And like I mentioned earlier, most importantly, it helps you evolve into everything that you were destined to become. And it's who you become that impacts the lives of others.
I love that, especially this call-in for leaders to face these systemic challenges head on.
Yeah.
I think we can reach leadership positions sometimes and forget that, and we can put it then on the people in our communities who we're supposed to be helping to then face the challenges while we have achieved a level of privilege that allows us to maybe not run away, but step away, even though we might not say that that's what we're doing.
Because in many cases, it doesn't directly impact you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it's important for people to understand that even when you reach a leadership position, even when you get the seat at the table, you have to continue to confront that as the leader. Set the tone, be the model for for the rest of your community to follow in your footsteps and to not just follow you, but join you on the front line.
Yeah.
Become a more whole version of yourself so you can lead the community that you're a part of to resist that systemic barrier. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Rising above the challenge, I love it because that is I'm pretty sure the ethos of your business. Elevation is a must.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that. How did everything coalesce into this idea and how did you bring it to fruition?
So, I mean, going all the way back to when I got laid off, right? I had already came up with the concept elevation is a must. And ultimately what that means is every ceiling that you bust through is going to become the floor to your next level. It's all about you constantly evolving and becoming a better version of you. Because like I mentioned earlier, what's most important is not what we do. What's most important is who we become. We don't do success. We become successful. Right? Success is an inner process of becoming. So we can't become something greater unless we actively work at improving ourselves, our mindset, our practices, our habits, the environment, the story that we're telling ourselves. That's what elevation is a must is all about. So when I got laid off, the vision that I had was ultimately, I want to be a professional speaker. You know, I want to be in a position where I deliver keynotes. I want to move people with the words that I speak. And that evolved over the years. Like I mentioned earlier, I didn't have it all figured out, right? But ultimately, there was this driving force and this desire to connect and impact the lives of others because I know where many people are at, whether it's anxiety, depressive thoughts, suicidal ideation, challenges that they're facing, giving up on their goals and their dreams. I've been there, right? But I also understand that each and every single one of us have a personal power that's at work within us. We just got to connect and tap into it. And I figured out how to do it for myself, and I wanted to share this with others. So throughout the years of me stepping into this vision, it constantly began to expand itself. Like I mentioned earlier, speaking, coaching, events, creating content, partnerships that impacted the lives of others. And then since the media production side as well, with the documentary series and short films that we develop, all with the focus to provide leaders and ambitious young professionals with the tools, the strategies, and the insights to help them build, grow, and scale their ideas.
I love it. I love it because it really taps into the ethos of the year of the nap for the show. It's been all about community. If you listen to every conversation that we've had, some form of conversation about community has come up. Either how you build it, how you find your way into it, how you create it, how you like needle it down to like the people that you might be a part of a community, but really finding your people to be able to like hit your stride, become that whole version of yourself. And I love hearing you just talk about passionately taking the dream and vision that you have and expanding it beyond just yourself. Because you said earlier too, the big realization was it wasn't about you. It was about this big picture that you're a part of. And the only reason that you can have that realization is because you've done that work internally to understand yourself, to become secure in yourself, capabilities, competencies, and the past, becoming just developing that relationship. I think it's fantastic. I'm trying to think of all of these different words to describe it, to share, because again, these messages I think don't always land with people or stick. And I think the work that you've been doing as I've been following you these past few months is the consistency creates stickiness, if that makes sense. The consistency requires people to come back. And so vanity stuff is what it is. As we navigate social media, it's a thing that you want to put on your decks to get dollars or whatever to show people why they should work with you. What I noticed about your stuff is like the things that you're doing and the content and the engagement that you're seeing isn't fake. Yeah. I've been thinking about that organic growth for the show. I want to achieve something of what you've created for yourself. Yeah. In that people are showing up in the comments, they show up to support, to share, to have a conversation about what it is that you're talking about. Yeah. And I think this idea, this vision of community and your place in that community is so powerful that you shared within this. I just wanted to share that. It's just like, again, it's taking me back, giving me Murdoch vibes. I'm loving it.
Can I say something to that point?
Absolutely.
Because Patrick, I think we're in a generation now, in a day and age, thinking of social media in that world, right? It's a world in of itself. Yeah. And I think a struggle that this generation often battles with is really aiming to simply just get attention.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like in many ways. And effective leaders, truly impactful leaders, that's not our goal, right?
Right.
Our focus is not to get attention, it's to develop respect. There's a difference between attention and respect, right? Attention is given, but respect is earned. Now, granted, you can get attention instantly, but it's short-lived. When you acquire and gain respect, there's longevity in that. And respect comes from you showcasing your character, continuously adding value, and like you mentioned earlier, authentically displaying that you care. That's the driving force behind the work that I do. Because granted, if it was about me, I would have given up a long time ago.
Sure.
You know, you find a sense of power when you attach something to a purpose that's bigger than you. Like you tap into a strength that you can't create on your own. Because there's going to be times when we're talking about entrepreneurship, you're going to question yourself. There's going to be times when resistance is very real. The struggle is extremely intense. And you're battling internally with, should I continue to move forward? And what helps you take those extra steps, going the extra mile, is understanding that somebody somewhere is counting on you to be at your best. So that's what's at work within me when I create a video. That's at work within me when I step on stage. That's at work within me when I'm creating a project or a concept for our documentary series or our short films. It's all about what value can we provide to the person on the receiving end of this. And that's what leads everything that we do.
Somebody somewhere needs you to be at your best.
Counting on you.
Yeah, is counting on you to show up in some way. I love that because...
Well, think about this. This is a question I constantly ask myself.
Okay.
And sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. Go for it.
But I think this is a question that all the leaders that are tapping in right now can truly find value from. Ask yourself, in those moments, when you feel like quitting, when you feel like giving up, who misses out because I don't show up? We talk about mental shifts, right? That's what it's about. When you shift your focus and you change your perspective, nothing changes your life more than your perspective. You might find yourself in a mental funk, discouraged, disappointed, but when you ask yourself that question, in that moment, you take your focus away from your problem at hand and you understand, hold on, somebody else is desperately needing me to show up. Whatever it is that you're working towards, who misses out on me not showing up?
I love that. It's making me think about scholar and activist Tema Okun. She writes about the idea of 7-generation thinking. And so thinking about your actions, not how they impact even the people in your immediate circle tomorrow, but thinking about how they impact down the line 7 generations.
Generations to come.
Because that's people counting on you to show up at your full capacity.
Yeah.
And that's something that you're probably not even thinking about because that's 7 generations from now, you're not alive.
Yeah.
But if you show up now, confront as a leader the systemic barriers that are happening, you're impacting that person 7 generations down the line that needs you to show up.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Speaking of other people, we have a recurring segment on the show called Give Them Their Flowers, where our guests talk about, share, nominate one person or entity or somebody who they want to give their flowers to today. So, David, I want to ask you, who would you like to give flowers to today?
Man.
One person is hard.
One person.
You can do multiples, but we're trying. Never mind. I'm trying to help.
I got a list. I'm gonna pull out my phone. I'm gonna pull out my phone. Got a whole laundry list of people. Man, doing great work. Man, my brother Darren Gibson. My brother Nigel Bryant. Nigel is he recently launched his own ministry, church, impacting lives through the core. My team, man. Chris, Austin, Keith, Joel, Atlas, Bass, all those brothers, man, able to help us create projects and, bring some great content to the public and inspire individuals. It's hard to just pick one, man.
It is. It always is. I always say one, and we've been moving to one, and it's always, I think, at least 3 has been the minimum amount. And it's great, but it's great because, again, it speaks to community.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point, I think, of the show and why we're doing it right now. And the concepts that we're approaching is, how do we continue to have conversations that let each other into their communities in a way that's accessible and with consent and empowering to each other. Yeah. So I appreciate you being a part of that. Give them their flowers. Elevate your next event today. Visit FridasFlowersIndie.com to learn more. David, I appreciate everything that you've been sharing with us today. A lot of things I hope leaders and anybody watching and listening can walk away with a lot of lessons. I just have a couple more questions for you before we let you get out of here. So I guess my next question was advice. And right before we got to the flowers, you gave some really great advice. And so I guess I'm going to change the framing of the question to... I want to bring it full circle. We've been talking about the vision that you had. We started talking about the vision. The vision is not only expanded, but become more clear as you're going. What does the vision to you look like now after expansion, after some clarity? And how do you see that vision evolving in the next 5 years? It doesn't have to be arbitrary on the 5, but just evolving in the future.
Really leveraging the tool and the power of storytelling. At my core, I'm a storyteller. Whether I'm telling stories on stage or I'm telling stories visually on screen with content that we're creating. But I believe storytelling is a powerful tool that you can leverage in a positive way and in some cases in a negative way. But we're taking the positive route.
We'll go the positive route for sure.
But it's a tool that you can leverage to impact the lives of others. So the direction that I'm heading with the vision that I have established is really leveraging the stories. diving into more documentary series, more short films that really resonate with communities and cultures and personal stories. Then, of course, impacting organizations and teams and corporations and small businesses on stage at conferences and events. I'm very big on that. You know, events can transform individuals' lives just being in that environment where people are like-minded and they're sharing a common goal to become the best version of themselves. So really hosting more events, not only here, but remotely as well, and inviting individuals into a space where they can have a sense of community, where they can grow and develop, where they can be impactful and they can connect with their true self and give themselves permission to be who it is that they are. Because in many cases, we live in a current society where that's taboo, right? You're expected to live a certain type of life, to look a certain type of way, to speak a certain type of way, to do something specific. And when you go up against the norm or challenge the status quo, you know, you get fingers pointed at you. But at the end of the day, like you've experienced, and we talked about this off video and offline, on how you're not connecting with your true identity, man, that's nerve-wracking, right? It's like a fish that is drowning in air because it's not in the ocean or the water.
But doesn't know why.
Exactly. You know, so it's about you getting into your space and understanding that your space or your element may look different than someone else's. And you have to be okay with that because that's what makes the world a beautiful place. If I was just like you, Patrick, and all of us in this room and everybody watching this with the exact same person, we would live in a completely boring space.
Zero views because everybody knows that story.
Everybody knows that story. Everybody speaks that same language. Everybody has the same experiences. Everybody has the same perspective and philosophy. It's completely boring. But what makes life amazing is you with your upbringing, your background, your experiences, and me coming with mine, and we're sharing them. And even though they may not be identical and completely aligned, I can learn from you and you can learn from me. I can be inspired by you and you can be inspired by me, right? And I believe in the world in which we live, when you talk about the political challenges that we face, you know, you talk about all these different challenges in different sectors, so to speak, right? Everybody wants everybody to think like them. And that's not the reality of the world in which we live, right? It's about embracing our differences. It's about us understanding who we are and giving ourselves permission to express the uniqueness that lives at work on the inside of us. So that's where we're going, brother.
That is beautiful. I love it. There's no other way that we could end the episode other than that incredible, incredible piece. We're going to clip that out too as well. Last thing before you go, how do we find and follow you? How do we support you once this is out in the world? We're offline. We're looking for ways. How do we find David Gibson? How do we see the quest? How do we do all the things? How do we tap in with you?
So we'll go through the line of it. elevationisAmust.com. That's my website. Take advantage of all the free resources that are available there. Subscribe to my growth newsletter. I frequently share mindset tools and success practices to your inbox. We don't flood you with spam, but ultimately some value in your inbox that will help you level up your life. Connect with me on social media. My handle is @D1Gibson, pretty much on all platforms, including Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, and then youtube.com/David Gibson. I've got a professional development and personal growth broadcast that we do every single Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's on my YouTube channel. And then on the YouTube channel as well is The Quest. And you can connect with that specific franchise at questsmb.com. Again, questsmb for small businesses.com. And then the same profile on Instagram, questsmb. Hopefully I touched all the bases there.
I think so. We're going to have it all linked in the show notes. Make sure y'all tap in with David and everything that he's doing. If you're wanting to tell your story and you got a small business, definitely tap in. Because there are things to be done and he will do a great job.
Season 3 coming soon.
Season 3 coming soon. David, thank you so much for sharing everything and being part of this conversation. It means a lot.
Absolutely, brother.
I appreciate it. Everybody else, episodes of this show drop every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@Conversation Piece Podcast. Follow us on Instagram @Conversation Podpiece and catch up with all the new content that we got coming out. Lots of fun stuff. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter. That is now coming back out. We got revamped in July. Really excited about everything coming out there. Last but not least, merch. Always got to mention the merch. Merch is coming. At some point there will be merch. We will have merch for you. And if you subscribe, maybe you'll get some cool stuff. Last but not least, shout out to Mike Lee on the cameras, John Overton and Popular Rapture on the boards, Zane on the internship and Sit It In, Chris on the BTS for David, and David for being such an excellent, wonderful person and an amazing guest. For everybody else, I have been Patrick Armstrong, the titular host, and this has been Conversation Piece. We'll see y'all soon.